So tomorrow is Labor Day, which for many of you likely means parties, picnics, parades, hot dogs, watermelon, whatever it may be. It's also usually the start of the political season. But this year, it's safe to say it came a bit earlier. I mean, just take a look at what's happened in the past few months. An assassination attempt against the former president, a change at the top of the ticket on the Democratic side. It's been a lot. Now, we don't know everything that will happen over the next 2 months. We do know some things about the state of the presidential race right now. A new poll does show Harris taking the lead nationally, but far more important in my view is the one that shows Harris closing the gap with Trump in the Sun Belt battleground states. It's all going to be won in a handful of states. And a different poll shows Harris winning back young voters, with those aged 18 to 34 moving from supporting Trump by 11 points to supporting Harris by 13 points. Also among Latino voters, a group the Trump team has been focused on cultivating, spending money on it too. They have moved from supporting Trump by 2 points to supporting Harris by 16 points. And black voters now support Harris by 64 points, up from supporting Biden by 47 points. Basically, this is all good news, but what it means is Democratic and Democratic-leaning voters are coming home. That's a good sign for the Harris-Walz team. It's also important to remember the race remains close. And a lot's happening on the campaign trail, too. Harrison-Walz wrapped up a bus tour through Southeast Georgia last week, and she is holding an event with President Biden tomorrow in Pennsylvania. Trump and Vance are also holding a handful of battleground state rallies. And Harris and Trump will debate, of course, in just over 1 week. Now, while the Trump team's television and digital advertising may be targeted on immigration and crime and pretty closely targeted on that, we shouldn't ignore that. It appears that Trump, Vance, and the rest of their MAGA crew are still really struggling to land an effective line of attack against Kamala Harris. I mean, think about it this way. For weeks, they've seized on the fact that Harris had yet to do a sit-down interview, saying she was hiding from the media, unwilling to take questions, which also wasn't true at all. But this week, Harrison-Walz sat down with CNN's Dana Bash to do just that.
One, I am so proud to have served as vice president to Joe Biden. And two, I am so proud to be running with Tim Walz for president of the United States and to bring America what I believe the American people deserve, which is a new way forward, and turn the page on the last decade of what I believe has been contrary to where the spirit of our country really lies.
But the last decade, of course, the last 3.5 years has been part of your administration.
I'm talking about an era that started about a decade ago, where there is some suggestion, warped I believe it to be, that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, instead of where I believe most Americans are, which is to believe that the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. That's what's at stake as much as any other detail that we could discuss in this election.
So that's just one clip. We're going to show you a lot more clips, talk to them with some of my favorite political people. But just to give you a summary, basically Harris and her running mate, Tim Walz, fielded questions on past positions, on foreign policy, on the border, on what they would do on day one, who they want in their cabinet. I mean, they talked about a lot of things in this interview. That should settle this question, right? Everyone should be happy and kind of move on to the other important debates of the day? Of course not. Instead of dropping it, the target has simply been shifted. Now the attack isn't over whether or not Harris did an interview, but over whether or not she did it right. Many Trumpers are apparently angry that this was a joint interview with Harris and Walz. They're outraged. I mean, first of all, it's extremely common, you can see all the photos there, for candidates to do joint interviews. Just ask Barack Obama and Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine, or even Donald Trump himself. It's all even sillier when you compare these attacks with what Trump has been up to this week. I mean, first of all, he was re-indicted on charges related to his effort to subvert the last presidential election. His campaign was rebuked by the U.S. Army after an incident at Arlington National Cemetery earlier this week. He also reposted wildly crude remarks about Kamala Harris on social media and shared dozens of other dark, derogatory, disturbing posts this week. Posts that call for the jailing of people who have tried to hold them accountable, like Special Counsel Jack Smith and the lawmakers who investigated January 6th, that have AI images of his perceived enemies in orange jumpsuits, and that promote QAnon conspiracy theories, just to name a few. mean, that's kind of the choice facing voters in just 65 days. You can take issue with the timing or logistics of a television interview by a ticket who answered a range of substantive policy questions. That can be the hill you want to die on. Or you can take issue with all of that. Maria Tusa-Kumar is the president and CEO of Voto Latino. Molly Jong-Fast is a special correspondent for Vanity Fair. Tim Miller is writer-at-large for The Bulwark. They're some of my favorite people to talk politics with, and they all join me now. Let me just start. Molly, I'm going to start with you. I mean, I want to play a bunch of parts of this interview because I think it's quite telling, especially with the comparison. So let's play. What I'm going to tell you is my favorite part of the interview, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
What I want to ask you about is what he said last month. He suggested that you happened to turn black recently for political purposes, questioning a core part of your identity.
Yeah.
And
Same old tired playbook. Next question, please.
That's it?
That's it.
I mean, I loved that. First of all, I loved how she said, yeah, during the interview, first of all. But it's interesting because there's a debate coming up in just a week. She's going to be attacked by Donald Trump. She's going to have to deal with this more and more as she does more interviews, as she also in direct attacks from Trump himself. Now, Tim, you've prepped Republican candidates for debates. What do you think of how she dealt with that answer, or what else stuck out to you about that interview?
Yeah, I thought that answer was really great and charming. And so I think that was definitely a highlight. I concur with you on that, Jen. I think that these interviews are challenging. So like this nitpick that I'm going to offer is like less about the nitpick, but more about looking forward to the debate. And that is that she was having to introduce herself, right? And she's having to answer for some of these things. So I thought she answered quite well, explaining her evolution on a range of policies and kind of answering for some of the positions she took in 2019 that are different from some of the position she's taking now. And she seemed very well prepped for that. And she had to kind of explain that and explain her rationale about how she wants to build consensus and how to be effective, you have to build consensus. I liked that. But in a lot of these answers, what you didn't see is what you do prep candidates for, Jen, in these interviews, which is you answer that and then you pivot to why your opponent's terrible, right? And she didn't do as much of that. And I think maybe that was strategic. As the first interview, she was focused on her own record and introducing herself to people. And I think that ahead of the debate is the big question, right? And, like for one example of that, in that clip, right before you played it, Dana said, you've never even met Trump before. The debate will be the first time. It might have been interesting to remind Dana why they've never met before.
Right.
It was because Donald Trump didn't show up to the peaceful transition of power because he was pouting like a child and flying home to his house at Mar-a-Lago and his emotional support cougars. And he didn't actually show up. He was the first president in history not to show up to the transition of power. And that was after he tried a violent coup on the Capitol. So that's why they've never met. So she doesn't have to be a pundit like me, but just as an example, I think that there's a lot of material to work with on Trump. And going into the debate, you got to refine answering your question and then pivoting to, but what about this guy?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I do agree with you that I think strategically she probably wanted to kind of base her own record and answer some of those questions. But the counterpunching, that's a key part of the debate. Let's just turn here a little bit to the where the race stands now, Maria, because there's been I listed some of the interesting polling that I think is interesting. I think it's Democrats coming back home. When you look at Latino voters, when you look at black voters, when you look at young voters, one of the things that jumped out to me in that USA Today poll is that Harris is leading low-income voters, 58 to 35%. You've been out there on the trail, you've been talking to people. What stuck out to you either about that poll or kind of what you're seeing out there right now coming into Labor Day and the path ahead?
So what we found really interesting was right before the convention, she was at 60%. Independents were at 7%, and Trump was at 29%. So she is taking away not just from the independents, but she's taking from Trump. And that was before the bump. And this was a poll that Voto Latino conducted with 2,000 voters in battleground states, in Georgia, in North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada. What we're seeing since then is even more appetite for her because she's talking to them in a way that makes sense. This, we haven't covered it enough, but the fact that she's giving them a platform and saying, we're going to build more affordable housing, we're going to talk about rent controls all the way down the line, that is what we have found that young voters, Black and Latino, 18 to 29, housing is their #1 issue. Normally, you think that housing is something that you struggle in your 30s and your 40s, but the fact that she's hitting them exactly where they are speaks to not only who she is, right? Like this idea that she is a woman of color, that she has an immigrant experience, that she can talk to them in code, but then she's also translating it and meeting them where they are with their bread and butter issues that's impacting them.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point because we've long talked about this presidential race not being about policy issues between Harris and Trump.
Right.
But there are some issues. I mean, she was talking about rural health care on this bus tour.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about economic issues that a lot of Latino voters are responding to.
Mm-hmm.
How do you explain this kind of big swing among Latino voters in this poll?
So what we found, again, when Biden was on top of the ticket, was not that the people were defecting to the Republican Party, but more that they were interested in third party. And it was women, Latina women, that were defecting to third party because they were aligned with the Democratic issues, but they just felt that they needed something fresh. And that Biden, while great policy, they didn't know his policy. What we found most interesting, and this is why her defining herself on this first interview last night was so important, was that people loved her, but they don't know who she is. So she's a blank slate. That's the best thing for an opportunity for her, because unlike Hillary, who had 30 years of baggage because the right defined her, she has an opportunity now to say, this is what I stand for. And we haven't talked about it enough, but it also makes it harder for the far right and for foreign agents to define her on TikTok and on social media platforms because she's speaking to them directly.
That's a key point. You got to fill the space. We have to sneak in a very quick break. Everyone's staying with me.